Definitely not. How are you?
Doing great. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm on my first day of my social media break. So this is literally the final day for me to do something on social media for 2 weeks.
Really? Okay, well,
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you're closing it out with me because it's already like you've already had your full day of work because you're ending your day right now, right? It's 7
Yes,
p.m.
yes.
there. Okay.
It's 7. Yes.
Well, I'm glad that we're ending it together. So you're not going to be on social
Definitely.
media for 2 weeks, you said?
Yes, 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. Like it's summer in the Netherlands, and I haven't been in the Netherlands for a couple of years, and there's so much going on, and I'm working on a new program. So I decided it's just time to take a break and really like take care of myself because in my personal life there are some things happening as well. So I felt like, okay, bye social media, just be present in life and enjoy.
I think that's awesome. Well, I'm really glad that you're doing your social media ending with me. And I think it is so important to people need that message too of knowing that you don't have to stay on social media all the time. Like it's important to go and live your real life. And especially if you are like dealing with personal issues or trying to grow your business, sometimes it's so important to get off of social media and stop worrying about what everybody else is doing and just focus on you. So I hope those 2 weeks
Yeah,
are going to like revitalize you.
I know. I'm just so excited.
Well, I'm super excited to have you on, share the platform with you today so we can talk about all things podcast management. I know that this is like
Yeah.
an area that you excel in, and I love podcast management too. I never fully transitioned into being a full podcast manager, but I do offer podcast management services to my clients. So I'm just super excited for us to like
Yeah.
chat about it and let people know that like they can transition from VA to podcast manager. So go ahead and give us a little bit like a brief introduction of yourself, your business, your name, and just give us a brief introduction
Everything.
about you. Yeah.
So, hey everyone, my name is Valerie. I started my business as a virtual assistant. Then I made the transition to social media management, and then I ended up as a podcast manager. And now I'm basically specialized in helping people or helping like online service providers, business coaches, whatever, with launching their podcast. And we also have ongoing management service. And I also have my own program
So excited. Tell us a little bit about that.
about the program.
Yeah.
So basically, the program, I will walk you through everything from like, okay, I want to transition from VA or not even transition. I want to learn about podcast management.
Yeah.
Where do I need to start? And I learned everything from YouTube. And I always say, you can learn it yourself. It's not
Yeah.
like rocket science what you're doing. But if you want to go to the short route, then it's like following a program and learn from someone. Same as what you are doing. If you want to learn how to become a VA, then it's learning from someone who has done everything before. Like that's the short route, and that is what I'm teaching inside of my program to basically how to become a podcast manager, launch your podcast management business, and yeah, get your first couple of clients.
I love that. Congratulations on having your program too. I know that feeling of like finally being able to like produce and launch your program and get clients
Oh
in
my god.
because I know how hard we work on the back end to make sure that we are, making quality programs and making sure that it's like just giving people the best opportunity to create, their business or their podcast management services the right way.
Mm.
So let's kind of dive in and tell me like what is podcast management? Because I think a lot of people hear it all the time. And even though it's not new, I think it is new in the sense of like coming to the forefront now where everybody is saying all businesses should have some type of podcast. So what exactly is management? Let's break it down in a layman terms.
Yeah. It's so funny because I started my podcast management journey like I think 2.5 years ago, and like no, I'm from the Netherlands, and serious, I told my friends I was living in Vietnam at the time, and I told my friends I'm doing podcast management, and everyone was like, "What's a
Yeah.
podcast?" So it's super fun. But basically, as a podcast manager, I like it. I like to explain it really short and sweet. It's basically you are taking care of the raw audio file. So that will say you are editing the episode. And what I mean by editing, like removing the background noise, removing like the long pauses, like the interruptions from like microphones, dogs, whatever type of person is walking maybe into the room.
Yeah.
Editing content is also something that we do. And we are also uploading, of course, everything to the hosting platform. So basically what you are doing if it comes to the editing part is taking care of the audio, that it sounds like how everyone is listening. And it's funny, I'm not sure if you had the same idea when you like start learning about podcast management. Then I was like, oh, I always thought, I never had the understanding that it needs to be edited like an audio. I don't know why I didn't think about it, but I was like, oh, maybe it's just like how it is, but that's not the case.
So funny enough, this is why I was so happy to hop on this platform with you, because even though I offer podcast management to my clients, I do not do any of the video or audio editing. I do
Oh, what are
everything
you
else.
doing?
So I book guests for them. I'm scheduling the guests. I'm researching guests for them to have on their podcast. Once the episode is completed and it is edited, and the video and the audio are edited by someone else, they transfer it to me. I upload it to like Transistor or Libsyn. I repurpose it into audiogram. So I do everything else except for editing the video and audio, which
Oh,
I'm not opposed to doing it. It just was something that I never ended up going, learning more
yeah.
about. So I do like everything else other than doing the audio and video editing. But it was
Oh, I
also
love
like,
it.
I never really thought about like, editing. I never really thought about that portion at all because it was something that I never had my hands on. It was just like, I
Yeah.
received it and I'm like, okay, I don't know if it was how it was recorded, like, right there, or if they did make edits to it. I was just like, okay, I'll just do what I do with it.
Yeah, that's so fun. Like, and that is what I love about podcast management as well, because that's also something that I teach in the program. Is there are so many like now I talked about like only the editing part, but you are talking like the show notes,
Yeah.
creating audiograms, doing guest management, guest research. There is so much, and there is for everyone something. That is what I love about podcast management. Like you, I'm not sure if you don't like editing, but you never tried it probably, but I love editing, but I don't like doing guest management because of the time difference, and I feel like I'm always behind. What? Can
Can
you
you
hear
hear
me?
me?
Yeah.
Okay, something just happened. I do this to myself every time. I have an alarm. So I typically do lives at 1, but I have an alarm that goes off at 111. And it's like, I'm really all about signs and synchronicity. So I had an alarm that goes off at 111 every day. So it just went off. So let me just cut it off for a second. So it's going to pause us for a bit. Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I
Ugh.
also have an alarm going off at night.
I turned it
Are
off
you back?
because when I turned it off because when you just swipe it up, it'll go off again in 10 minutes. And I didn't want that to keep happening. So I'm so sorry that happened.
Okay.
I really need to change it because this has happened on a couple of lives, because I usually do the lives at 1 o'clock, and then at 1:11 that always goes off. So I need to just change it to a different time so that doesn't happen anymore. But I'm sorry. But yes, I totally love what you
No
were saying
worries.
about how you were saying like all
Um,
the components.
yeah, that is like that. There is for everyone something in the podcast management world. Like that, I didn't like doing guest management because of the time difference. Like I'm in Europe,
Yeah.
most of the guests are in somewhere in the US, probably most of the time.
Yeah.
So for me, that was I tried it, and then I'm like, okay, this I don't like it because there's such a big time difference. But there is so much, and that is absolutely like what I said. That is what I love about working in the podcasting world and even teaching it to everyone, because I have people in the group who like doing guest management, who only want to do launches without the editing, only taking
Yes.
care of the launch. So there is so much for everyone.
Yeah. I agree. So how did you said that you started as a VA. So like what were you doing when you started as a VA? And then what was the time frame to pivoting from VA into fully being a podcast manager?
Really fast. Like I basically how it went. I wanted to try. I was traveling that time, but I traveled a lot in the past. So I was looking online, Google. jobs to do online. And then I ended up like virtual assistant. So I took a virtual assistant course. And then there were so many things that I needed to learn. And I am like a really practical person. I need to learn one thing, do one thing.
Yeah.
Um, I need to have really organization things in my life. Otherwise, I'm gonna be crazy. Um, so that VA was like, okay, I did the course, I loved it,
Yeah.
but I realized, okay, this is not my jam. There is too much like new things that I needed to learn, and I got really overwhelmed really fast. But
Yeah.
then I bumped into someone who did social media, and then I'm like, oh, this is one thing, like one thing for
Yeah.
different type of people, one thing. Okay, did a course again, a program was it not a course, a program, and then I realized I'm not a writer. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? I'm not a writer, so I did a whole social media program 10 weeks further, and then I realized, oh, I'm not a good writer, and I don't like it.
Yeah.
So what am I doing with social media? So I tried it for a couple of months, and then I'm like, okay, this is not my
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. And then from there, you
Um,
transitioned into podcast management.
yes, and then I met a girl in Bali. I was in Bali at the time, and she did podcast management, and then I'm like, okay, let me see what I can do. And then she said, maybe podcast management is something for you. And then I looked into it. She like showed me a little bit of the back end. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, this is cool. This is my jam.
Yeah. I love that though. I love that like this is what I always say to my clients and or like aspiring VAs. Even I what I love about the VA world is that it introduces you to a whole bunch of different like
True.
businesses or or tasks or social media management, podcast management, Pinterest. It introduced you to all these avenues of businesses or ways that you or services that you can offer that you never really considered. But most of the time I notice a lot of people always start as being a VA, and that allows them to kind of like build up their skill sets in order to transition into what's next. So I think it's so cool that like you were able to start this way, but then you pivoted to social media manager and then you pivoted to podcast management. And I also think it's crazy because myself, like I always consider myself a VA. However, when I first started, I still did a lot of administrative work, but then I really started focusing on social media management as well. And then I began offering podcast management services. I still considered myself a virtual assistant under all of that because I was offering,
Yeah,
admin, social media, and podcast management. But I think it's funny how like our stories are very similar in the sense of like VA, social media management, podcast management, and also I love how you're talking about like you have to do what you really enjoy. Like the reason why we created these businesses and are full-time entrepreneurs is because we want to do work that we love. So like you realize that you didn't like writing, so social media management wasn't going to be for you because obviously that entails copywriting. I love social
yeah,
media management for myself, but when I was doing it for clients, it became something that I didn't love anymore. So it's like I think it's awesome to also point out that like you have to find out what services you like to do best, whether that be in the VO world or in podcast management, because just as you said, like you do audio and video editing. I don't do that. But finding
yeah,
out whatever really you enjoy to do is overall the best thing that you can do for your business because you want to make a business that you enjoy doing. You love the work that
true.
you do. So I think that's so important.
Yeah,
So
and that is the thing, like we already mentioned it, but that's the thing that I so love. Like we are both working in podcast management,
yeah,
but like I don't do writing, I
yeah,
don't do guest management. I only do the editing.
yeah.
That's what I do. And we are still working in the same thing. So
In the
that's what I
same
love.
field. Yeah, it's like you said, so many moving components, so many different avenues that people can take in order to get into that space of offering podcast management as a service or fully stepping into it as a full-time podcast manager. So I think that's awesome too. So I think this is like something that people love to know because again, we all like love to talk about money, but how much can a podcast manager make?
Great question. Yes, everyone like wants to know how much money you can make. That I would say depends on which services you want to offer, but you can definitely reach that 5K a month for sure. And the thing what I love, like I didn't work that long in the VA world, but um, something that okay, we no, I'm going off track if I'm start talking about that. No,
No,
it
please go
depends
ahead.
on which. um, what I want to say. No, let's talk about the money first. So
Okay.
it depends on which which services you offer. Like I do podcast launches, so my launch packets are 2,500 US. So if I want to reach 5K a month, then I only need to have like do two launches a month.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you are like I do the launch and then I have the ongoing management as well. So that's like my retainer package, and that's
Yeah.
what I wanted to say is that if you like I have clients, I work with them for over a year.
Yeah.
Like their business involves, involve as well, but we can still be on the same page because podcast management, of course, they want to monetize and that kind of thing. But there are things and skills that I can learn, and it doesn't require so much to learn or completely go in another direction. And that's yeah. So yeah,
No, so I was gonna say I love that when you focus on the fact that like obviously you podcast managers can make at least 5K or even more just depending on the services that they offer. But how you
yeah,
also stated that like you work with your clients for over a year, but you're open and willing to like learn different things if they need different things along the way. So like say before you were only doing the audio and video editing, but maybe they want to expand further on having your retainer package where
yeah,
they need the assistance every month. So I think that's awesome how you have different avenues too to make sure that you are getting paid for the services and knowledges that you have within podcast management. There was
yeah,
something else that you said too, but it just slipped my mind. But I love like the breakdown of telling people that like it really depends on the services that you offer because there,
yeah.
as we said, there are so many different moving parts, and we kind of touched on that before. But let's like dive deeper. So, what are I know that video and audio editing is something that we've already touched on a lot, but what are all the components, or give us a few components of podcast management? So, like I know we talked about show notes, but share a little
So
bit
yeah, you
more.
have like audio editing, then you have like of course you need to write show notes, and for everyone who doesn't know what show notes is,
Yeah,
nobody it's basically a short description of the episode.
yeah,
Then we also need to create social media graphics, so that can be an audiogram or like quotes. Now reels we are doing for one client, we are trying more reels because it's more video, so it's also improving what's like trends with Instagram. And then, of course, uploading and scheduling everything to their hosting platform so that it goes out on time.
yeah,
That are basically the basic things for, I want to say basics, but that are the basic things for podcast management. And then what you said, you can do writing social media posts for your clients. You can repurpose the episode in a blog post. You can create pin for Pinterest.
yeah,
There is so much. Guest management is something that you can do in that podcasting world. So there is so much.
yeah,
I offer only like launching and ongoing management,
yeah.
no other things because that's just not my zone of genius. Um, and I don't want to have a big team. That's always what I wanted to say. I don't want to have a big team with a lot of people in it. Um,
You want to or you don't?
no, I don't want. Sorry, I
Oh,
don't want.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Why?
I don't know. I feel like I want to go travel again. And I was talking with my coach the other day. And then I feel like, okay, I, um, the funny thing, it's a realization that I had. And I want to like talk a little bit more about my Instagram story on my Instagram when I'm back. But the thing is also, just in general, I was going so fast. So like the 10K month, that was like, I had a tunnel like thing for that 10K month, and
Yeah.
then along the way, I was hit like 8, 9, but never hit that 10K month. And then along the way, I realized like that's why I'm taking a social. That was never the goal.
What was the goal?
The goal was traveling the world
Yeah.
without going back home.
Yeah.
And then I found something like podcast management. I have a program that I absolutely love. I do podcast management myself, and that gives me the flexibility to travel instead of like versus being a VA and always like 24/7 answering. Like, I'm not sure if you have that, but that's what I experienced in the beginning, depending of course also on your clients. But that's why I've realized, okay, I don't want to have a big team. I just want to have a good product suite, like working
Yeah.
on another program, and then travel again and have fun.
So that you just wanted the freedom to travel. So that's why you want it to be like, that's why you want to stay a solopreneur. So what you said just
I
triggered
have
what?
I have team members, sure, I have,
Oh,
but
okay.
if I'm bringing on like I'm not a writer, so then I need if I offer a blog repurposing into a blog post, then I need to hire a full
Mm,
copywriter to do that, and
got
I'm
it.
not sure, but in my every copywriter that I met is you need to pay
Pricey.
for it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
and I like.
everybody. I think you
Yeah,
have to pay
and that's
everybody
okay. That's
for,
okay.
yeah.
But for me, it didn't make sense to offer that as a service because, of course, I also need to pay for it. And I am just not a person who go through the whole like copy and check it. And
Gotcha. Okay, okay. So I'm all for outsourcing things. I
yeah,
right now I don't outsource anything. I'm a solopreneur at this moment. My goal is to have my own team. But I will say that like in the VA world when I first started, yeah, it was like because I was trying to figure out what my services were, I was kind of pulled thin. But when you really do hone in on what your niche is, that's kind of where you don't get pulled as much in different directions, which is
yeah,
why like I loved and I'm grateful for all the clients that I have and that I still have right now. But like I won't accept new clients unless it's for VA coaching, since that's now where
yeah,
I've completely pivoted because I want to help others be able to create their business. So I'm totally in alignment with you there when you say like, you know, you want to do what's best for you. What was the end goal? The end goal for me was also freedom, the freedom to be able to travel because I love traveling too. You definitely got me beat on the traveling though lately. Like just hearing Bali, I'm in the Netherlands right now, all that stuff. Like, you know, my end goal is to do that too. So I love that. Like, realize that hey, you were so like tunnel visioned on this 10K month, but that wasn't the goal. That wasn't your big vision.
yeah,
Your big vision is what you are living, which is traveling. But what you had said, which triggered my mind, was a moment ago you had said that like your two packages are like 2,500. So you think of it like, oh, if I or 22 or something, you were saying that if you get two clients that's 5,000. Is that what you were saying?
yeah. I have one. Let me clarify. I have one package is like 2,500. That's a launch,
Okay.
so that is 8 weeks. Um, So basically that's 12.50 a month.
Yeah.
And then I have two retainer packages. So one is 920, that's including editing, writing show notes, uploading, and creating an audiogram. And
Okay.
I have a lower package that is 720. And that is editing, uploading.
Okay. So what I love that you said about that was how you were like, you know, when I think of it in that manner, it's only two clients, you know? So I like to do the same thing too when I think about my program because it's instead of thinking, oh my gosh, I can't get anybody, it's like all you need is two people. All you need is one person to achieve that, you know, financial or monetary goal. And when you start looking at it in that framework rather than, oh my gosh, I need to make this much money or whatever, when you start think of it as like, oh, that's only two clients that I know that I can help because I have a program that is literally built specifically to help people go from beginner to, you know, owning their own VA business. And in your case,
Yeah,
go from not knowing anything about the podcast management world to becoming a podcast manager. So I love how you broke it down, like not to think about, oh, I need to make this amount of money, but start thinking of it in the manner of like, oh, that's only one client. Oh, that's only two clients
yeah.
because it's
I
like,
love that.
yeah, it's like, what? That's only two clients? I can do two clients, you know, or
Yeah,
when you start really
true.
believing in yourself. And I love how you were talking about all the moving parts. And I know we touched on it so much, but just to like reiterate again, it's awesome that like people can do video editing or they can do guest scheduling and guest research or they can do the social media part like content creation. These are like just three different services that you could offer for podcast management if you didn't want to do the whole thing. So I think it's like awesome that there are so many moving parts that somebody can find something that they enjoy doing within doing podcast management. Um, the way that I was introduced to podcast management, funny
Yeah,
enough,
tell
is
me.
my very first client, who's still my client today. He is the one who introduced me into the podcast management world because he has a podcast. So when I first started working with him, I didn't know anything about podcasts. Like I've heard of them, I never really listened to them. It was never my thing. But like
Yeah,
he trained me on like how to set up his podcast, and how to do the transistor and how to what systems to use for audiogram creation, all this stuff, except for the video and editing because he pays someone else to do that. And through him, that's how I was able to learn everything about podcast management and then offer it as a service to other clients. Because he
Love
also,
that.
yeah, so it's like, it's crazy to think how you're introduced to things because one, you never know, you might get a client who you're helping do something else and they need help with something else, and now they can train you on that, and now you're able to utilize that as a new service to offer to other people. So that's how it worked out for me. So it's really crazy how I was even introduced to the podcast management world because
Yeah,
I never thought
I
that that
love
was going to be
that.
a thing. But that's
Yeah,
what you say,
yeah.
ladies.
Like I love so many. I have one student in the program as well. She was working as a VA, and then her VA client asked her, "Hey, can you help me with the launch of my show?"
Yeah.
And it's so like, okay, she said, "Yeah, I'm just in a program about becoming a podcast manager." So all good, but yeah, I love that. That's great.
And it's like, I think that also just shows the dedication of the person and the work ethic of the person, because here you are, you're open and willing to learn new things, and when you're open and willing to learn new things,
Yeah,
that's when you're able to really like advance yourself and advance your business. Because here, your client needed help with something, your client just trained you how to do something, and now you can offer this as a service to other people and get paid for it, all because of your dedication, discipline, and to that client. So I think that's why it's so
true.
important to build these networks.
Yeah, and I think like if you know straight away from the beginning, okay, like for me, it took like becoming a VA, of learning about the VA world, that I realized, okay, this is not my thing, because
Yeah.
there are like so many new things that I needed to learn. And then social media, I realized, okay, I'm not a writer, so what am I doing? So, but it's I think what I loved with starting as a VA is that what we mentioned before, you can really have that introduction to all those things that are out there, and then slowly making that transition in something that you love.
Exactly. That's
If you want,
like,
or you can also be a VA for the rest of the like time.
that's something you love. The overall goal, like we said before, is it's to do what feeds your soul. So maybe people,
Yeah,
if you love administrative work, then being a VA is for you. If you love doing, I mean, and let me keep in mind, you don't only have to do administrative work to be a virtual assistant. I was just using that as an
no,
example. But if you love, guest scheduling, or not even guest scheduling, but if you love calendar management, email management, being a VA is for you. But it also just allows you to learn a bunch of tools, resources, and systems for you to pivot into different avenues. Because many of the lives that I've been doing so far, most of the people started as VAs, and
yeah,
they either are still a VA or they pivoted to something else. But the VA world is what allowed them to be able to transition so smoothly because of the skills and experience that they learned while being there. So I think that's so awesome. And I know you kind of touched on this more, but did you want to go deeper into like your story of how you transitioned? I know you already gave us like the synopsis of it, but what made you fully know and decide that podcast management was your thing? And how does it remain to be like the thing that you love to do today?
yeah, cool, great question. So I always like I loved listening to podcasts that time, when I, of course, now as well, but then yeah, podcast was like my thing. So when I found out that it was basically a thing, I'm like, okay, this is so cool, because I never ever 1 second when I was listening, I was thinking about, okay, this is something that you can offer as a service. As I knew this straight away from the beginning, I
Yeah.
probably would skip the whole VA and social media part. um but what I love about podcast management, and that is like my personal thing, I need to have structure in my life,
Yeah.
like organization. I need to do every like same thing, and I wanna have, because I was traveling. Now I'm back home, but at that time I was traveling. I wanted to have that flexibility in my schedule to do the work when I wanted to do the work. So if
Yeah.
I wanna, like, this afternoon I start working at 4, and there's nobody telling me something that I need to start or that I need to do. It's really like organized. My clients dropping the episode in the Google folder. They message me on a Trello workflow board. Hey, Val, the episode is in the Google folder, and I do my thing and make sure that it's out. There is
Yeah.
barely client communication. That is also something that why I loved podcast management in the beginning. Now I feel like, okay, I'm not sure, but it is just how it is. Like, it's just a part of their business. And if you are doing your work good,
Yeah.
there doesn't need to be a lot of client communication as well. It's just a part of their business.
So, how do you ensure that you're having a good client experience and enhancing that experience when you don't really have to talk to them so much?
I think having a proper system and organization, and like we don't have weekly calls or things, but of course they have in Trello there is like a section where they can ask questions and checking in with them every like couple of weeks. Hey, how are things going? Are you still happy? Things like that. Um, that is the thing how I make it like still a 5-star experience.
Okay. Okay. When because that was my first thought when you said like I don't really have to talk to them that much, which I think is like great because they know they're trusting you to just complete, to do the video and audio edits. They're trusting you to handle all the stuff for podcast management. But that also made me think like, oh wow, so how do you make sure that because they trust you, they're still feeling like, oh, everything is moving the needle forward in their business. But like you said, you do those
Yeah, we do
random.
those check-ins, but I think as well, like podcast management, it's just if you like the clients that I work with, they already have a program. They are like us, but then a little bit further. They already have a program. They already have like they are known for something, like serious known. Um, and I think if it comes to having that experience, like having that, besides that we are not talking that much, it's just
Yeah.
really like, I don't want to say organized, but it is. Like, it's basically we are doing the same work every week over and over again,
Yeah.
different episodes. And I think if that is a part that they feel like, okay, you are doing a good job, like it's different than with social media, with graphics, that is like taste.
Yeah.
Do you like this graphic or not? Do you like
Yeah.
how I wrote this post? Do you like, there is so much more that needs to be, I don't want to say checked, but there are more checking points
Yeah.
than if it comes to like podcast, like making sure that the editing is good or that the audiogram is good, because that are just basic static graphics. And
Yeah.
like same with looking for snippets. Like I have a client, she for her, we always pick 2 snippets so that she can choose. So then we are like, okay, there are 2 snippets in the folder. Let me know which one you want. And sometimes she said, okay, just pick one. It
She's like,
is
I
like,
trust you.
yeah, I think it's the, and like I know what you like, people think, oh, you don't have that much client communication, but I think because it is so structured and organized, we don't need to have those weekly check-ins with them to
Yeah.
see how things are going, because most of the clients are batch recording, so there's like 4 episodes. Now is my alarm going off? So there's 4 episodes. So there are 4 episodes that are ready for that month, and then it's just us doing our thing and checking in with them to see how things are going
So how do
along the
you
way.
how do you keep track of like your metrics when working with your clients? Do you produce metrics for them or is it just based on like how many downloads they're getting for their podcast? Because
Yeah.
technically, how does that relate? How does that correlate to you? Because you're not the person who's making the podcast content. That's your client,
Yeah.
which
But
would
that's the
also,
thing, like not every, and that's the thing what I'm also teaching in the program. Not everything is depending on, the goal is not always having multiple downloads or 10,000 of downloads. No, if they want to monetize, like, and that's the thing why I work with business coaches who already have a program. They know their target audience so well.
yeah,
And what they want to do is like teach their potential students, clients, how you want to call it, they want to address that thing where they are struggling with. For example, I launched my program. I hired a coach who was teaching us how to launch a program.
yeah.
I was first her podcast manager. And
Oh, wow.
I was in the podcast. I already worked as a podcast manager. I had 7 clients. I was fully booked. I didn't know what to do. I was like head over heel. I was, oh my God, this is not where I signed up for, because I was barely making any money and I was working way more than I was working in my 9 to 5. She was my client. The first 3 or 4 episodes, she called me out, like serious. I'm like, are you talking to me? Like, you know what's going on in my mind.
Yeah.
Do you know what happened?
What?
I signed up after I think 10 episodes for her 12-month coaching, high ticket coaching program.
Yeah.
I had, of course, I spoke with her. but more from a podcast manager's perspective. So it depends what's the goal of their podcast, and the goal, like download numbers doesn't say anything, because her podcast is, of course, she has downloads, but it's not the client with the most downloads.
Yeah.
But I know everyone is like, oh, her episode is so good. Like I shared that podcast episode with my business friends, and I'm like, oh my god, she's so good. She's calling me out. I said, I know. I know. So what is the goal? Is the goal having more downloads, or having the goal making people aware of the program, feel like nurturing them into your program?
Yeah. Okay, I love that. I love that she broke that down like that too, because that was my first thought. Like, okay, so how do you keep track of metrics? But you're right. What is the metrics that they even want to keep track of first? So I think that was wonderfully explained. Love that.
Yeah, okay, cool.
No,
Yeah,
seriously,
like of
because
course we are checking like the download numbers and sharing if they are in the charge. But for the clients that I work with, it doesn't really matter if they are really in the charge, or if they have having multiple, like how many downloads. No, it's like
yeah,
because they are talking about their program, and they can see, okay, this week we had, or this month we had like 6 people signing up for the program. Okay, and then on the application form, how did you hear about us?
gotcha,
Podcast,
got it.
Instagram.
So most of your clients also have a program. Most of your podcast clients also have a program, so they're
Yeah,
using the podcast as a way to just bring in leads for their program. Okay.
yeah.
So
And
what
that is
is
also something, oh,
no,
to
go ahead.
touch on like really quick. Like I work in podcast management now 2.5 years, and I work in the beginning with everyone, also with people who are not using the podcast as a part of their sales funnel. But
Okay.
what happened is that they are not as serious as the people that I'm working with right now. The
Yeah.
people that I'm working with right now, they know, okay, I need to record the podcast episodes. I need to send it by this and this date, because then everyone else in the business can also do his thing, because the podcast is their part, is the beginning, the basic of their whole marketing.
Yeah. So what is a piece of advice that you would recommend to somebody who well, okay, so I'm going to ask you two questions. So the first one is, what is a piece of advice that you would recommend to somebody who already has a podcast, but they don't have like a good system in place in regard to like making sure that they're getting the video or the audio to their podcast manager in time in order for, just how you just basically said that your clients know that, hey, they need to get this done and submitted by this time so that everybody else can do their part. What would you recommend to somebody who has a podcast but they don't have good structures in place? What would be like your biggest tip to them?
Work with a workflow board. Yeah, like work with a workflow board for sure. And I would say, like the client that I was talking about, um, she's doing batch recording, but she is like, now she has a child, she cannot record, of course. She can record at home, but what she's doing, she's booking a recording studio.
Okay.
And then she knows, okay, there is no like questions asked. I need to go there because I already paid for the studio, and
Yeah.
I need to record the episodes. And then she upload everything in the Google folder, and then it's just a workflow board that keeps everything organized and structured for everyone in the team. So for me as her podcast manager, but also for the one who's doing the copy for their email list, for their website.
Have you ever had a client that didn't submit their stuff on time or always was delayed? So how do you deal with those clients?
Um, of course, like I'm not firing straight away, but it's also something that I teach it in the program as well. Like that are business boundaries. When do you need to have the episode,
Yeah.
and what are you doing when they are late? Of course, if it can happen once, it can happen 2 times.
Yeah.
Three is okay. We need to like. I always tell them, hey, you are late. Keep in mind, we need to have the episode this and this date. Um, but I also fired someone. Like I am not responsible for their episode. So basically, or they like what I did first. I did a rush fee. So if they are late, they need to pay because
Yeah.
it's not my responsibility. And if they are like late and they want to do it later,
Yeah.
it's gone. If they over are, for example, Wednesday, tomorrow is the episode. the episode needs to go live tomorrow, and if they don't have the episodes, like today is already super late.
Yeah.
Today is too late, and we can push it. But if you don't record, you lose the episode.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that is also like I learned to be having like stronger boundaries because
Yeah.
otherwise everyone is walking. How do you say it? I don't want to say walking with
Walking
you.
over you, walking over
Walking
you,
over you.
taking
Yeah.
advantage of you.
Yeah, and I was like so good in my heart. Oh, give me the episode. I can still do it. Big time difference from US and Vietnam. And then I realized this is not sustainable. Like
Yeah.
I respect them and they need to respect my boundaries as well.
Yeah. Okay. Love that. Love that. So, the other question I wanted to ask you is what is your biggest piece of advice to somebody who wants to start their own podcast, but doesn't know like how to start to hire a podcast manager, or what do you recommend them do first?
I would do first look at where your podcast is about.
Okay.
Where do you want to like you don't need to like map the entire season out or all the episodes out, but look at your business. Okay, where do I want to talk about? What's like for who is the podcast basically for who? Because of course if you are a business coach, maybe you have multiple programs, then you can do it over that. But I think having an idea of for who you are talking to, for who you are recording, or for who your
Yeah.
podcast is a great start. And then um, make a decision. Do you want to do it yourself or do you want to hire someone?
Okay. So, do
Yeah.
you have your own podcast? Would you want to
No.
ever do your own?
Um, maybe. Like that's the thing. I am not. I am thinking about it. I'm playing with it for such a long time, but I also feel like I am not sure if I can keep up with having a podcast when I am back to travel again. And
Okay.
I'm super excited, but I don't know. I don't feel like, yeah, I want to have my own. That's not what I have. No,
Yeah,
maybe in the
and if you
future, but
don't feel like yeah, then don't do it. Like whatever,
don't
anything
do
you
it.
do,
No, that's
yeah,
what I learned as well. Like, and I'm like going back to travel again after the summer. So it feels like, okay, then you need to bring your mic with you. And, I'm really like focusing on or setting up my business in a way that allows me to travel. And of course, with podcast management, it's like the best thing to travel because it's so structured and so organized.
yeah,
Um, but I really want to go back in that you travel a lot. Like, I don't want to say backpack life, but I just want to go, like, explore the world without being really present in what I'm
yeah,
doing. Because that is what I just mentioned. That it was the goal. And I got so caught up in, like, oh, I want to make 10K, whatever. That was never for me to go. I just wanted to travel the world. So I really want to go back into, like, the things that gives me joy and excites me,
yeah,
and how can I structure my business in a way that I don't need to be present all the time.
yeah. I love that.
And
I love
having
that.
a podcast is a great like way, but it also needs to think about, okay, then I need to or record a bunch of episodes before I start,
Yeah.
or I need to do bi-weekly episodes. So I'm thinking about it, but I'm not sure how to organize that when I'm traveling, and that
All
feels
the time.
like a thing on your shoulder again. Do you know what I mean? That it
Yeah.
feels like, okay, that is
So
that commitment that I don't want to make.
yeah. I get it because you want that freedom to just be able to travel and you don't want something to hold you back. And you're already able to create that life with the podcast planners, which your business that you've created already and have had, would you say
Yeah.
over 2 years now, right?
Yeah.
So I get it. I'm all about creating businesses that one, you love, feed your soul, and allow you to really accomplish that big why, that end goal, your big dream vision, which for you is traveling. I hope that like during your many travels that we just happen to like bump into
Oh
each
my
other
God,
one
that
day.
would be so cool. Yeah, yeah,
And or we
yeah.
might just have to plan something if we don't end up bumping. Like, hey, girl, where are you
Yeah.
traveling to? Let me see if I can link up with you on that side of the world.
Yeah, that would be so cool. Like now I'm just also so excited to like it's funny, like I already mentioned it, but I was so caught up and probably with me more people, like because of COVID, we couldn't travel. So of
Yeah.
course your business is shifting a little bit. Like I had never like thought I would launch a program. That was okay, not on my list.
Yeah.
Okay, COVID came, I launched a program. I'm super happy, super grateful. I'm so excited about this. I'm launching another program. Um, so that are all good things, but now it's time to go back because it's an option again to go back to really why I started this business in the first place.
Yeah. And I think it's never like you can always go back to the drawing board. You can always go back and like, yeah, your end goal is freedom. But shoot, if your goal ended up changing to wanting to be hit those 10K months, like it can always change. But I love that. I've enjoyed talking to you. I've learned so much about podcast management and thank you so much for just sharing the platform. But I do want you to go ahead and like do another little tell us more about you. Tell us how people can work with you, where they can find you.
Okay, cool. They can find me on Instagram, but not in the upcoming 2 weeks.
Not for the next 2 weeks because she's going to be traveling. Well, she's going to be taking a break, and then afterwards we'll be probably traveling.
Yeah, no, I'm back in the Netherlands. I'm staying in the Netherlands, but how you can work with me if you want to have if you have a podcast, we have podcast management and podcast, or if you want to start a podcast, we have podcast launching. But if you are a VA, and I see some VAs, but if you are a VA and you are thinking about adding, you don't need to niche down. That's always what I'm saying. I'm like, you are still a VA and doing podcast management as well.
Yeah.
I am not telling people that they need to niche down. But if you are thinking of adding podcast management to your service, I have a program, Signature. It's now evergreen, by the way. So you can join whenever you want. I'm building out the email funnel in the upcoming weeks. The Podcast Manager Academy is my signature program that you can join. And I also have a Pick My Brain session. So if you already work as a podcast manager and you want to like just pick my brain and see how we like, or give your client a 5-star experience, or setting up a workflow, whatever, like guest management, all those things. That's an option too.
Love that. Love that. So yes, like Valerie said, go follow her on Instagram at the Podcast Planners. She's going to be taking a break for the next 2 weeks. So in 2 weeks, she'll hop back on and be there live. But if you want to work with her, all that information you can find on her page, linked in her bio. And if you want to work with me, Alaina, I have my signature program, VAB Elite Way. It'll teach you how to create your high-end virtual assistant business and sign clients in 90 days. And if you already know that podcast management is for you, Valerie's for you. If you're still figuring it out on the VA world and want to figure out what services to offer or how to even start, I will help you out in VAB Elite Way. All the links are in my bio. But Valerie, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
You're welcome.
Share
my
your
less
expertise.
Social media presence. Hey, what I was thinking, maybe it's nice to do a guest training for your people in your program.
Yes. No, I already am way ahead of you, sis. I definitely wanted to do that. Yeah. So as you know right now, like I have my signature one-on-one program, but I'm also building out a group program. So I do want to utilize your services when the group program starts. Right now with the one-on-one, I'm trying to figure out different ways to incorporate something of that nature. But yeah, I'm way ahead of you. I have a list of people and you're on the list to help within the group program. So I'm glad you said that.
Awesome.
I love that.
It just popped in my mind. I'm like, oh, that's so cool.
Oh, I way thought about that a minute ago. Like, just like how I have the list of the ladies that I wanted to do the live with, I have a list of ladies, you're on that list, who I would love to have as guest speakers. But I want to do that for the group program. I love the one-on-one, and I love that that's an opportunity for people to have that one-on-one experience with me. But again, one-on-ones are going to become, very time-consuming and exhausting. And as we both said, we want that life of freedom to be able to travel. I don't want my calendar to have 400 one-on-ones. Like, I don't have enough time for that. But so as soon as that group program is launched, I'll definitely give you all the details for that. But thank you so much again for sharing your knowledge on podcast management.
Thank you for having me. It was so fun, and I cannot wait to see each other somewhere on this world.
Somewhere else, girl. Somewhere else. We're gonna plan it. I already know.
Yeah,
enjoy your social media break, and I'll see you.
Thank you so much
when you come back.
Yes. Bye.
Bye. Have a good day. Thank you again.
Thanks.